on the News Channel 5 network. This is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris here on a Monday. I do indeed hope you had a very pleasant weekend. I'm glad you're joining us this morning. Really good topic as always. We're going to open up the phone lines and invite you to join in the conversation as we continue our series of segments we're doing on MorningLine, tying in with News Channel 5's Investigatives team series, which is running the month of November, Broken, looking at juvenile crime, juvenile justice, and the like. And we've done several, I think, groundbreaking stories to this point, and more to come tonight. And we're going to talk about it this morning with a preview and take your phone calls. By the way, we're not only on the Plus this morning, but we're also streaming live on Facebook at newschannel5.com. So message us any questions or comments you have. But the focus this time is on DCS, Department of Children's Services. News Channel 5 Chief Investigative Reporter Phil Williams with us. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning again.
Thank you for coming on. You were in this morning on the morning show, and this is for a piece that's going to be airing tonight.
Yeah, tonight at 6, we're going to take a look at the Department of Children's Services. And you know, one of the really fascinating issues that we uncovered during our 6-month investigation is the fact that DCS is responsible for supervising the most violent, the most dangerous juvenile offenders in the state. But we uncovered some pretty serious questions about whether they're doing as good of a job as they need to be doing, whether they're really watching these juvenile offenders.
If you would, just lay out for people then. I mean, most people think of Department of Children's Services, and they're the agency oftentimes called when children are living in abusive or neglectful situations. They go in, deal with the families. Obviously, they're a target of criticism. They have a very difficult job. I want to be fair to them on that front. Right. But talk about this other layer of what else they have to do. Yeah,
this actually used to be a separate department. Right. There used to be a department called, I believe it was called Youth Development. And that's the juvenile justice side of what they do. This is not the dependent and neglect cases. These are the kids who have gotten in trouble with the law and, you know, for committing crimes. When a local juvenile court cannot treat those children on their own, when they feel like those children need to be locked up, for their own safety or for the safety of the public while they get treatment and hopefully rehabilitation, they are sent to DCS. And then DCS, you know, often will send them to, you know, some sort of facility. Once they're released, then DCS is responsible for supervising those children. And what we discovered is that in many, many cases, you know, serious violent juvenile offenders, while under DCS supervision, are committing new violent crimes. And so we're going to be raising some really serious questions about whether DCS is doing the job that it should be doing. And we'll take a look at that. And actually, if Mary Elena wants to cue that up.
Let's do that.
We can go ahead and take a look. But, you know, questions about whether when juvenile offenders are on electronic monitors, is DCS you know, sounding the alarm
when they're someplace they shouldn't be.
When they're someplace they shouldn't be. And then questions about what kind of supervision they're getting.
Well, do they do home visits?
They do home visits, but they tell the kids when they're coming.
Okay.
And
that does not make any sense.
Yeah, see, and that was my reaction as well, because if I am a kid who's up to no good and I know my DCS caseworker is coming to my house, I'm going to get rid of the gun. I'm going to get rid of the drugs.
Well, think of any scenario. That's like the food inspectors. Do they call the restaurants ahead of time to say we're coming?
They shouldn't.
Of course not. I mean, I'm just saying it's standard on anything along those lines. Well, let's go ahead and look at this first piece that you were talking about, a portion of it, Kids and Guns.
Yeah.
Is what it is. Talking about some of the, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Is this Kids and Guns or is this?
Which one did you want to run first? We have 3 clips.
Let's look at the preview.
Okay, the preview piece first.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we were going to do that one. Mary Elena, do you have the preview piece? We've got it. Let's go ahead and have a look at that.
Okay.
They do not sound the alarm, and they don't respond with a sense of urgency typically, as we would hear.
Juvenile Court Administrator Kathy Simback also noted that Davidson County's own juvenile probation officers routinely ride with the task force.
16, 15.
making unannounced visits to search the rooms of high-risk offenders who are on probation, something that DCS doesn't do with even more dangerous offenders.
Our local level offenders are getting these checks by the probation officers, by us at the police department.
And they're not as dangerous.
And they're generally not as considered at the threat level that the children in the Department of Children's Services supervision are.
And they're
not receiving these types of checks. They're not expecting to receive a knock at the door and have that Department of Children's Services officer be there with the Metro Police Department. That's not happening.
That's crazy.
I absolutely think so. I think that's a big missing piece. You have to have the accountability.
DCS Commissioner Jennifer Nichols says her department relies mainly on electronic monitors to keep track of juvenile offenders.
Unannounced home visits are fine, but we should know they're not there by monitor alerts.
But if you do an unannounced home visit, you may find the kid has a gun.
Okay, so if you go in and search the house, I see what you're saying.
We had one recently where we found just a single bullet in that room, and now that child is still at home with increased supervision, didn't find a gun, but we think that child is hanging out with people who have guns, and we think there's a really high risk that that child is going to end up with a gun. So we are completely on top of that case. DCS would never find that little bullet. They wouldn't know that this is a child that you need to watch day and night.
Okay. Really clear there that that's a concern. All of a sudden, they think they have guns. You know, they have the suspicion, but they're still. And they, by the way, these are kids that are not in any secure setting, right? They're back home now.
They're back home.
And the nature of the crimes we hear about, sometimes the very, very worst, sometimes transferred to adult court. But that's a very, very small percentage, right?
Right.
When you say serious crimes, what are we talking about here, Phil?
Well, I mean, we're going to be showing examples tonight on News Channel 5 at 6 of kids, in one case, a juvenile who had committed an aggravated robbery while under DCS supervision.
The ag robbery means he had a gun.
He had a gun pointed at somebody.
Yep.
Then, when he was arrested for that, DCS did not revoke his probation. And he went out and committed another robbery, according to police, and this time shot someone in the stomach. DCS, again, did not revoke his probation. And we were there when the task force brought him in, finally, because he had let his ankle monitor go dead.
And they're like,
and DCS by this point was trying to fix some of the problems that we were uncovering, and they finally let the police know, hey, we've lost this kid.
okay.
And we're going to show you other examples. DCS lost an offender, and while he was on the loose, in fact, he's still on the loose, police say he was involved in a murder. They still don't know where he is.
Do you have any handle on the number of juveniles that maybe, is it hundreds? Is it, how many are under this DCS umbrella?
At any point, according to the commissioner, they have somewhere 900 or so juveniles that they're supervising
Across the state.
Across the state.
And we'll get into this. I'm sure you dig into the reasons why, or what could be part of the problem here. You've heard all along, going back for some of the other things DCS does, staffing, and issues. I'm not looking to make excuses for them, but are there reasons behind why this is happening?
Well, I mean, what you're going to hear tonight in the story at 6 is that the commissioner says it's just a mindset.
Okay.
You know, at one point, she said, well, you know, having these unannounced home visits makes a lot of sense to the police. It makes a lot of sense to you as an investigative reporter, she said. She said it made a lot of sense to her as a former prosecutor, but that these caseworkers are not law enforcement. They don't have that background. And so I think we're going to be starting a very serious conversation about whether this agency has the right mindset. Are they so focused on foster care and dependent and neglected children that they don't have the law enforcement mindset that is needed to do this kind of work?
That is fascinating. And it's not just, Phil, to me, the mindset. It also, just reading between the lines, you didn't say this, but hearing it when you talk about training, I think some of these caseworkers are afraid to go to some of these houses in some of these areas. with these dangerous kids and not knowing what the heck they're going to find. I'm just throwing that out there. But I mean, and if they don't have the proper training, in some ways I can't blame them. If they're not law enforcement, are they armed when they're showing up? Do they have backup security? You're going into sometimes these seedy neighborhoods sometimes where it's dangerous and you know there's a dangerous kid in there and who knows about his parents, and you're going by yourself? I'd have a problem with that too.
But they don't have to go by themselves because the Juvenile Crime Task Force goes into these neighborhoods with the local probation officers, and they've made it clear to DCS that they're willing to go with them.
Okay.
And so, yes, there are some concerns about, physical safety, but there are ways to deal with that. Take the police with you.
Okay, well, that's clear enough of an answer. Listen, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, we'll take phone calls. They're already coming in for Phil. We'll get those, as well as if you have any comments you'd like to make on Facebook. It's at newschannel5.com, and we will continue with more clips as well with Chief Investigative Reporter right after this. Stay with us.